Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today.
Hello.
Jade, hey.
Hello, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Yeah, no, thank you. Cool.
How was your shift?
Sounds good. Yeah, it was all right. It was busy. It's been a busy tour, to be fair. Grass fires galore. And then at 4 this morning, had an overturned car. So that was fun. Person's reported. Person's trapped inside. So that was good.
Shall we go for it?
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Jade, welcome to the Firefighters Podcast. How are you today?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you. The sun is shining. We're in a heat wave. What's not to love?
It is, isn't it? It's ridiculous. Was they saying it's going to be the hottest day ever? I'm sure we seem to be breaking records left, right, and centre these days. But it's like 37, 38 degrees this weekend, which is just bonkers.
Yeah, I think it's due to be 39 on Monday, Tuesday, and I think the highest we ever had is 38.7 or something like that.
Was that back in the 80s? Because I was born, I felt like we had some really hot summers when I was a kid, and then we went like 15 years of not having really any really nice summers, and now we seem to be swinging the pendulum.
Global warming, you know.
Global warming, exactly. We're causing it on ourselves. Now we've tried to get this conversation together for a little while now, and this is what people never quite fully get about the podcast is sometimes it can be like 8-9 months before I manage to pin somebody down, whether that's traveling down in person or just getting each other on the phone, because life is just so hectic. So, I just want to thank you for taking time out of your crazy busy life. We actually came together through a close friend of mine, Sarah, which kind of feeds in some of her background, because she speaks very highly of yourself, and you're sort of one of her heroes. I'm not sure if she probably shared that with yourself, but when I said I was
not for those words, but I'll say that to her next time I see her.
Yeah, just go, you're welcome. Do you know what I mean? I've added it for you, Sarah, just to inspire you. But I always like starting by just trying to get a real understanding for what creates somebody that goes on and does the sort of things that you've achieved. And I know for yourself, you're probably one of those deprecating people that's like, oh no, I've not really achieved that much or anything like that. But I'm always interested in how that sort of starts. So if you could start us with sort of what your sort of background was, where you grew up, what the sort of family dynamic and siblings was.
Yeah, so I'm, based on the accent, you can tell I'm probably Scottish, but I'm from way, way up the top. Whenever people ask me where I'm from, I normally say, have you heard of the Loch Ness Monster? Which most people have. And I say, well, that's where I'm from, and then they get it. So I was brought up in a small place called the Black Isle. I've got 2 brothers and 1 sister. Both my brothers are relatively sporty, my older brother especially, and my sister absolutely not. Like chalk and cheese.
Is she a younger sister or?
No, she's older. So I'm the third. So I've got an older brother, older sister, and then a younger brother too.
Okay.
And then both my parents live up there. So yeah, I grew up there. It was quite small. There wasn't really much like rugby for girls growing up. So I spent maybe a year playing in Highland Minis when I was 9 in an all-boys team, which, I definitely think I held my own from what I can remember and from what I've been told. But after that year was up, there wasn't really anywhere further to go. So then I stopped playing rugby altogether. And then it was a case of, watching my brothers play, watching my dad every Saturday. I was that kid running up and down the sidelines, constantly looking forward to, going out on a Saturday to watch rugby, wishing that I could be the one playing.
What was it about that fascinated you so much? Why did you enjoy it? Was there any other sports going on? I mean, I know, in the Scottish, in Welsh as well, it's a big part of the culture. But what specifically about it you found it enticing?
I think I loved the physicality of it from a very young age. Like, I really wanted to get stuck in. I wanted to, be involved in as much of the contact as possible. But then also just the fun day that it was. Like, it was a family day out on a Saturday to watch my dad play. But then it wasn't even like you were just watching your dad play. Like, you make friends with a whole team, and everyone just kind of takes you under their wing, and you just become part of the rugby family as well. And I think that was huge from a young age to just kind of see how welcoming it was. And I was young, but I thought of them all like my mates. So you'd always try and get involved in the action. Like, I'm talking like pretty young, but they'd like all celebrate your birthdays with you, and it was like second family. So watching the physicality aspect, but then the actual rugby family element, which you hear a lot of people talk about when discussing the sport. I think that's kind of what really pulled me into it.
Do you think that's still the case now as much as it ever was? I'm probably going to break my own rules and jump all over the place here, but I totally agree with you there. I've got a massive sporting family, from netball to field hockey to ice hockey to rugby to all sorts of stuff, and I was always around that as a kid, but our kind of neighborhoods and everything were a lot more like that. Like, you would play out more, you'd know your neighbors, and there would be more of that community feel to things. I'm not trying to get all doom and gloom, but do you think that is the same as it is today? I don't currently engage in any sort of community-based sports. My daughter runs a lot, but other than that, we don't do anything like that. But I wonder if it's still the same as it was, because we feel a little bit more detached and it's harder to get people. Do you think that's had an effect on the grassroots side of it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually know what it's like. I've done a bit of coaching here and there, and obviously, like, I try and do some player appearances and stuff down at clubs. And, it is really nice when you go down on a Sunday to a kids club to see the parents kind of joining in coaching and stuff like that. So from that element, I'd like to think it's more, it's still pretty family based. But I guess, like, the kind of flip side of that is, are more kids getting involved to make that environment, obviously more technology and access, etc. at the moment. So I'd like to think, yes, the clubs that I have been to and seen, it does, it has that family element that takes me back to when I was younger, playing that 1 year with the boys. But I do think that's something that constantly needs to be looked at and built on, because if you don't have the grassroots level, you don't have a future of the sport.
Yeah, 100%. Today's episode was once again brought to you by William Wood Watches. With the tagline, once forgotten, now reborn, every single watch has 100 years of firefighting history in it. They take an original Merryweather brass firefighter's helmet worn by firefighters in Britain in the 1920s and melt it inside every single William Wood watch. All of the craftsmanship is carried out in the heart of London, and they are proud to lock in the legacy of the brave firefighting heroes in every single timepiece. I think one of my favourite things about these watches is the Firehose Straps. Now, these have gone from landfill to effectively luxury now. They receive firehose from a massive amount of fire services from all around the world, which has come to the end of its life. The majority of the firehose around the world is unfortunately ends in landfill usually. They clean the hose, repurpose it, and sew it into the luxury watch straps themselves. I always wear the red one, but when you get your watch, it comes with a series of different ones you can get. You can explore the full range of upcycled straps on their website, and you can see the link in the episode notes. If you head over to their website, you'll be able to check out the Jubilee, the Triumph, the Valiant, the Bronze, and the Chivalrous. All of those watches are available right there, and you can spread the cost of these over 3 to 6 months interest free. So for the pulse of the fire service right there on your wrist, head over to williamwoodwatches.com and take a look. You're right though, it really does require such a massive commitment from the parents as well. When you started playing more regularly and you became part of teams, how much of a commitment do you think it required from your parents? Was it massive traveling? Because Scotland, to go from community to community can be a bit of a stretch. It's quite, it's not very massively densely populated, and there was a lot of traveling involved.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for the help of my parents. Like, hands down, have to thank them for that. Obviously, I only played the rugby for the year, but then I took up basketball at quite a high level. So I played for Highland, and that was twice a week, and then a match at the weekend as well. So my mum was, I'm one of four. My mum was constantly driving me left, right, and centre, and made sure that I was at all these, the classes. I did martial arts for a bit, basketball, army cadets. So every single night was full. And I obviously wasn't the only one. And then same with like that rugby, like when I was 9, like both my parents were always down watching. So without them, like I wouldn't have had that kind of being able to get there or take in, because it's a lot of work, especially when they've got their own lives as well.
That's what I was about to say, especially for like the mums and stuff. And I don't want to specifically make it about the mums, but I know my mum sacrificed so much. They sacrificed their finances, their life, their time, their body in creating us as well. And it really does just take so much of their time. And I wonder if there's an aspect of, as we've started to encourage people to really go for their ambitions later on in their life, when perhaps people thought their opportunity had missed them. There's kind of the counter cost of that, which perhaps is they spend less time. And I'm just saying from a personal perspective, I mean, like, I cap our kids at 2 clubs. So like my daughter swims and she runs, but I wouldn't allow her to go to another one at the minute unless she was able to sort of get there herself, just because we've got 3 kids and it's a huge time commitment. And you do start to, I never want to be that person that's just living for their kids, which sounds really horrible. And I don't know, help me out if that makes me sound like a bad guy.
No,
but like, you've got a partner now. Do you guys consider having children one day, or even if not, how do you think things have shifted in terms of us wanting to still live our lives in our 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe?
Yeah, I think people are definitely having kids later. Like, I remember when I was growing up, so my mum had me when I think she was 23. So I used to always say, I'm going to have a child and I'm 23. And then I hit 23 and I was like, I am far too young to have a child.
I'm not ready for that shit.
And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I was one of 3 at that point. I was like, how on earth, like, mums are heroes. My mum is a hero. I don't know how she did it.
Oh, no.
So like we've spoken about it, and we definitely want kids, but it's like what you said, like, we're not quite ready yet. So my partner, she wants to build up in her career. I want to build up in my career.
Are we ever though? Do you know what I mean? There's always something else. It's like, it's a bit like saying it's never the best time to buy a house because you've never got enough money. It's never the best time to have kids. It's never the best time to change your career. And I'm not saying that you aren't holding yourselves accountable there, but because there's always, especially in life now, we want more and we want more, not just financially, but even just like in our careers and things like that. And it's quite difficult, especially for women, although I know there's a lot of more. I mean, I took about 2 months off when my daughter was born. But if we're realistic, I feel like the majority of the expectation still falls on the woman, or a primary caregiver of some form. So there's always a bit of an imbalance because the child will naturally gravitate towards one, and somebody will have a stronger connection with them. So it does require a massive sacrifice. And I know, we had a guest on the podcast the other day, and she took how long did she take out? She took out like 3 years to have their 2 children, and she felt like she just completely lost herself. Her ambition, her personality, her friend groups, her interests, and she had to spend like another year, and all sort of support to her partner who really encouraged her to do it, because she was like, I don't really know who I am anymore, and there's a fear of losing yourself by creating somebody else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think it is difficult, especially like I'm a bit of a perfectionist as well, so I like to have all my ducks in a row. But then even like with regards to the fire brigade, for example, like if I fall pregnant, I need to go on light duties for as soon as you fall pregnant until the end of maternity, and that's a long time. So that is a big chunk of time to kind of lose your identity in a way, and then find it harder to then get back into it. And I think there's all those conversations that are to be had about, like you said, the right time, the wrong time, or what that actually looks like. Is there ever a right time? But actually, there's a lot more implications than people probably presume than let's just have a baby.
I mean, for me, I was just so lucky with my partner, and it was only we actually miscarried twins the first time. And when I watched my wife have to go through all of that, it really gave me a perspective of fucking get over yourself, in terms of me, not her, in terms of I was still, it felt like initially it was having an impact on me and the things that I still wanted to do. But thinking that Claire, my wife, had already made all of these decisions, because we already had 2 children from her previous relationship, so she knew what was involved in this, and then to have to go through the miscarriage. And when people know, when you have a miscarriage, it's not just like, oh, that's it and it's over. You have to go back for checks, and you have to take these pills and get sweeps and all kinds of nastiness and all that sort of stuff, which is part of the natural process. But it was such a sacrifice for her, and I almost felt bad for like carrying on with my life, because I was straight back at work and I was straight back into my things, and she was still going through it all. And I think about that when I think about somebody else having a child, because I wonder if there's a big sense of guilt, and we're going straight down a rabbit hole here. Sorry, we'll get back on track in a minute. But it's like, whilst you're out doing all your stuff, and this guy said it the other day, he was like, I felt really conscious about sharing anything that I was doing at work. Or so like for yourself, whether yourself or your partner decided to have a child or carry, or whether you adopted or whatever, one of you would ultimately be taking predominantly more time than the other. and there was a sense that the other person was still making some sort of progress in their life. And whilst you're together, you're also still an individual. And do you know what I'm saying? I feel that's a really difficult dynamic, and so hard for one person not to become jealous of the other, or not to begrudge their success or them ongoing in their life. It's really tough.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's where open communication comes in. Like, if you have a healthy communication between the two of you, I don't think it mitigates it, but I think it probably does help slightly. But I mean, who knows? I've got it all to come.
No, I think you're right. I think we've become, just me and my partner have become much better at that. But even as a society, having uncomfortable conversations, I think we're getting a lot better at it. I think as we have a greater awareness of mental health, it kind of flies in under that banner, the fact that we have more of these open conversations. I wanted to jump back to, you moved to university. You went to university in Glasgow when you'd started to grow and spread your wings and stuff like that. What was it like moving away from home, and what did you go and study?
So I moved to Glasgow more on the kind of basis of I wanted to be closer to rugby. So when I was 17, I drove to Edinburgh, which is about 3.5 hours, and I trialled for a development day. So I was like, I've had enough. I want to find a rugby club. Like, I want to play rugby more often than a couple of times a year for a random club, which is what I was doing previously. So I drove to Edinburgh, and then I trialled, and then I got put into the Scotland under-20s. So then for that season, I was travelling weekly, Inverness to Edinburgh and home.
Wow.
To train and play. So I was like, well, what's a way that I can, further my life, for example, education, but also probably make my traveling time a lot better.
What would that have looked like in traveling time, in the terms of hours, sorry?
So it was 3.5 there and then 3.5 back.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I'd usually stay over at the weekend, but then especially with Scottish weather, like I'd travel, the game would get cancelled, I'd travel home, it'd be rescheduled. And I learned to love my own singing voice, let's just say. There was some, real ballads like belted out in that car.
It must have been so demoralizing making those journeys and things to get called off though.
Yeah, it was, especially when you just wanted to play and have fun. But when I moved to Glasgow, I actually studied social work, which was really good, really insightful. I learned a lot. Obviously, I'm not practicing social work, but I think
sort of.
Yeah. Some of the things that I learned is definitely like helped around everything that I've done so far. But I didn't actually finish. I left after 3 years, so I got a diploma instead of the honours because I couldn't actually commit to my 4th year, so I had to kind of pick between rugby and the end of the degree.
Really?
And I picked rugby. Yeah.
What age would you have been when you joined the under-20s? Sorry.
Just turned 18, I think, because I spent a year in the under-20s and then I got taken up to the senior squad, and I was 18 in the August that I started training in 2012, and then when I got capped for the national team in 2013, I just turned 19.
Wow. What's the differences in things like physical development back then? And I'm not saying that in like a really weird personal question. What I mean is, for guys, physical development from a 17 or 18-year-old versus a 25-year-old or 30-year-old, it's quite significant. I know you've always been a physical player and you can hold your own out there, but how did you feel about that? Was there any reluctance? Was there any concern or fear? How do you felt you matched up in terms of physicality in compared to some of the other people you were playing with?
I think relatively well. Like, I was always bigger when I was younger, probably bigger than I am now. Not as strong or as fit, but probably, big boned as I used to like to tell myself. But no, definitely just bigger. I think I matched up well physically. I think the biggest jump for me was actually knowing the laws of rugby. I didn't really know them when I first got taken up to the squad. I knew I had to pass backwards, carry hard, tackle hard, and ruck. And that was kind of the key elements. If I could do that, then I'd, manage to work my way around the pitch.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, obviously when you get taken up to that level, it's like you're expected to know X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
I think that was the kind of biggest jump for me. It's going from playing no rugby, essentially, to a bit of fun rugby with the under-20s, but there wasn't really any fixtures, to then you're in the national squad and you're prepping for a Six Nations.
Bloody hell.
It was quite a jump in that element. But then when we got to the Six Nations, there were definitely players significantly bigger than me, which was a bit of an eye-opener.
From what sort of nations were these colossal monsters from?
So it's a funny story. So the French 8 at the time, Safi Ndiaye, so she currently still plays for France. She's more in the second row now. But I remember playing against her, and our captain at the time, who played 8, fell ill with food poisoning. So I got the call. I had the meeting with the coach to be like, Jade, you're going to be covering number 8. The captain's sick, so in the second half you're going to be moving there. So I'm like, okay, great. Never played this position in my life, but we'll go for it. And no word of a lie, Safi swatted me away like a little fly for a full 40 minutes. Full 40 minutes. But, you know, like, I tried to psych myself up. I was like, it's fine. Like, you're here for a reason. You've worked hard to be here. Like, technically just get what you need to do right. But then I came up against her, and it was a whole, like, reality was just a bit different.
Yeah.
To all the positive chat that I gave myself.
How was that to swallow when you were sat down afterwards, and when you had the drive home, and when you were reflecting on it? How did you feel about it?
Fine, to be honest. I knew that I was going to get better. Like, that was my first season, and I knew, like, I was young and I had a big, at the time I thought and hoped that I'd obviously have a big career ahead of me. And I still play against her now. And actually, just to fast forward a couple of years, when I played a season in France, Safi and I both got nominated for top 8 player of the year in the French league over there. So from going to having her swap me away like a fly to both being up for the exact same award in the top championship in France, I think that's a big thing that I really was proud of myself about.
Yeah.
To kind of reflect back on where I was to where I got to. And I massively respect her as a player. And I just think that moment for me was super important to see how far I'd come as a little girl from the Black Isle to playing in France, being at an awards sponsored by Land Rover, sitting on the front row where there's French TV, not having a clue what anyone's saying because obviously it's all in French. But, I was there, and it was surreal, and it was just such a great opportunity to then kind of take a minute and kind of see where you got to, which was absolutely fantastic.
What was it like being under contract as a player? That first moment where you realised, obviously you already knew that there was an ability for people to develop a lifestyle around this. You obviously people get paid for playing, but that when you start off doing something, at what point did you start thinking like, maybe I could be one of those people that makes this, a profession, makes it part of my career. I'm actually getting paid to do the thing I love. That must have been really weird.
Yeah, so I never, ever in a million years thought I'd get offered a contract. But in 2016, when I did get offered a contract, I didn't really know how to think or feel, to be honest, because I didn't expect it. I got taken into a meeting, and when at school you get taken into the office and you just automatically think of all the things that you might have done wrong.
Yeah.
That's essentially what happened when I went into that meeting. I was like, I don't really know what I've done, but I've done all my sessions. I've done that. I've done my analysis. I like to think that I'm not a rude person. So what have I done? But obviously when I got taken into that meeting, that's when they offered me the contract. They explained why. And it just kind of, time felt like it had stopped. I got a bit emotional. But I think the biggest thing for me that came out of that was it was the start. Like, nobody knew how it was going to look. Obviously, to subsidise the contract, I still had to work 2 days a week at the nursing home I worked in at the time. But the development and the resources and the coaching and the skills that I then had the opportunity to do was going to better me as a player. And if I could show that, if you do invest and it did work, then more investment will happen. And I think, I did that. I think I did that well. I think I really stuck in. I was in an academy set up with a full boys team, some of which currently play for Scotland men. And so we kind of came up together through that. And then the following year, another 2 people then got contracted support. And then it's just started to grow year on year. So I think the best thing about it was I was the first, but I wasn't the last. And hopefully, in 10 years' time, we're going to be in such a better place for all these people coming through. Like, we're developing, but hopefully the end result is going to keep pushing, above any of my current expectations of where we could even be in 5 years, which I think is really exciting for the sport.
God, yeah. So just sort of we're going to go into the details of money and all that sort of stuff, but what would you get in support wise as a player? Did you get any kind of accommodation, or would you get a personal, obviously you had coaches and stuff that you attended the sessions, but was there any kind of personal training or any nutrition provided for players?
Yeah, so I can't even remember. This was back in 2016, I think. So we had like the weekly schedule. So you'd have your skills sessions, which were the skills coach. Then obviously you'd have like more rugby based sessions where you do a bit more in that, a bit more high intensity. You'd have your S&C coach for the gym. You'd have access to analysis and footage, and training was filmed and stuff like that. We've always kind of had a nutritionist on hand if we had questions. Then obviously like physio, doctor, etc. So really good that we've always had full-time physios. And as somebody who's had quite a fair share of injuries, that's been something that's been, super, super helpful. And it's something that's maybe sometimes overlooked in other clubs about the importance of having, solid medical staff. But that was another big difference that I noticed kind of in that setup, which was really good.
What were the injuries like? What sort of stuff did you have to go through?
So I've had 2 rotator cuff surgeries on my shoulders, both of them. Wow. There was dislocation in there as well, so that was out for 7 months and then out for 6 months. I've ruptured the UCL in my thumb 3 times. I don't have a PCL in my knee, things like that. Your fair share of a mix, we'll say, like torn quads, all your kind of bits and bobs like that.
A quick reminder for all of our listeners of our monthly giveaway. Now, as part of our partnership with Hikes, Rosenbauer and Tallyman, we give away that little bit extra to our podcast listeners every single month. You can get 2 personalized BA tallies. These are hardware and they've got your own name on them, they've got your own service number on them, and they have the podcast logo on the back. And then for the juicy stuff, Hikes give away a pair of their incredible footwear. And some of the stuff is pretty expensive stuff, to be honest with you. We try and switch in and change it every month. We are guided by the gods of Hikes to make sure we are giving you exactly what you need for that time of year. So it might be boots, it might be trainers. And then once every quarter, our good friends over at Rosenbauer are giving away their Boros B5 Firefighter boots as well. So to be in with a chance to win, jump over to our social media platforms or YouTube, where you need to tag a member of the emergency services in the post, be following our page, and you will be in with a chance to win at the end of every single month. Back to the show.
Do any of those still aggravate you today? Do they have any? Obviously, you're fully functioning firefighter in your role, but in terms of, because like I used to take loads of performance enhancers, right? I went down a dark hole of strongman at one point in time, and I popped things and tore things and did all this sort of stuff. So now, even though I'm technically fitter and healthier than I probably ever have been, I'm obviously not as strong as I once was, because that wasn't natural strength. That was steroids and all sorts of stuff. So anything I do now is sometimes a little bit demoralizing, because I compare it to what I was once able to do, even if artificially. And I know you've not necessarily had the same background in terms of performance enhancers, but when you look back at what your body could do then, and perhaps, is it still as strong? Do any of these things still nag you? Is there any feeling of like, not a grief, but like there's kind of a death of a person, because there was that person that you used to be and there's a person that you are now, each uniquely brilliant in their own ways, but different still?
I wish I was still youthful, that's for sure.
Wish you were still. How old are you?
I'm 28, but I feel older.
Jesus, woman, you are like not even a third of the way there. I think the average life expectancy for a woman is 86 in the UK or something like that. So you're like a quarter, maybe just over a quarter. But you feel like you don't feel youthful.
10 years of international rugby, it takes its toll. No, so overall, I feel pretty good, and I think that's, like I said, subject to the medical care I've received. I've been able to rehab properly. Like when I've got an injury, I've gone through steps to make it stronger, so then I am coming back stronger. Yeah, especially when it's cold outside, like things ache a bit more, might pick up little niggles, but to be fair, overall it's quite good. I had surgery 10 weeks ago on my SC joint, and I came back from that quicker than anticipated, fully fit. The only thing that's not as good is probably my bench press after my shoulders. Me and my friends, one of the wingers, don't judge, she's quite a strong winger, had a bench pressing competition.
Fuck that.
So obviously back row winger, we were like, we're not going to base this on weight, like as in like body weight and, you know, all that kind of stuff. We're like, let's just see who can hit the 100 first. And I got to 95 and then did my shoulder. I think she got to 90 and did her shoulder. Obviously not because of the bench press competition in rugby, but we've never managed to build that back up again. So that's probably the only thing that struggles. But I mean, it's not really a functional movement that you need to necessarily be strong at. It's just something that you like to feel strong at.
It's a really foreign movement. Your body never does it in day-to-day life. And there's loads of research as well that says about how much more effective dumbbell presses versus bench press, because it's not a very healthy movement for the body. I actually tore my entire right pec off. I was on the 5th rep on 197 kilos and it pinged straight off. And I had 6 months of surgery and seatbelt around it and all this sort of stuff, and I couldn't move it for ages. And I cannot even watch a single gym fail now, because it's honestly, even as I'm talking to you now, my skin is crawling, because it's like when you see a canvas bag rip. It's that sound.
No.
And it's just, I just can't even watch it. I'm scared. Like I don't bench anything more than like 120 kilos or whatever now, because it scares me. Like
I'm not surprised after that.
Honestly, if I'm doing less than 6 reps, I'm like, no, that's enough for me. I'm fine. My big goal now is to try and stay as functionally fit as I am now for the next 30 years. Do you know what I mean? I'm 32 now, and I still want to be doing this. Because that's what I feel like is like the big goal. I always think of it like walking up a mountain, and as you get higher and higher, as we get older and older, the path kind of narrows. When you're young, you can jump around all of the path. You can mess about. You can have a drink. You can eat this whenever you like. You can eat that whenever you like. There's more things you can just sort of whatever with. But as you get older and older, you can't fuck about as much. Do you know what I mean? The body won't be as forgiving of you. And it's like the path narrows, and you need to be, because at different points up the mountain, people slip off the track, you know, and you meet somebody in the late 20s and then you meet somebody in the late 30s and they've just fallen off the track, and you knew them 5 years ago and they were fine. Or they just had an injury, or they just lost motivation. And so my big goal now is like trying to sustain that. I stand in the playground sometimes when I go and pick my daughter up, and I see people I went to school with, and I'm like, they've just given up. I mean, some people are fantastic, but some people have just given up. And I'm like, dude, we're in our 30s, early 30s. Sort it out. Do you know, I never say that to them,
a shake sometimes.
I know, and they can do it. They really can, but we're just so distracted by everything. I think it's so hard to do that now as well. But what was your eating like when you were competing at that sort of level? I'm interested as to how much you had to eat and what your nutrition was like.
So it's much the same, to be honest. I'm actually a vegan, you know, which people, you know, ask a lot of questions around, you know, your typical, how do you get your protein, or like, how can you do a contact sport if you don't eat meat, and that kind of stuff. But me personally, I feel like it aids my performance. I feel fitter, healthier, and I feel like I recover better based on it. And I still eat, you know, a lot of calories. I eat if I've got a big training session, I'll make sure that I'm eating more that day. If I'm not doing as much that day, I'll eat less.
What makes up the bulk of your meals? Because sometimes when I've done vegan, I feel like I'm just eating loads of carbs sometimes, as well as the salads. But to get the calories, it tends to be the carbs. It's like, you know, moussaka or couscous or pasta or potatoes or like, you know, avocados. What tends to bulk your meals out?
It depends what I'm having, really. Like at the moment, I love like a flatbread that you put some hummus on, and then you put just like a big salad, and then I quite like that fake kebab stuff. I'm not normally big on the fake meat, but there's something about that kind of Greek setup, and it's high protein, which I really enjoy. But then if you're having like, you know, a chickpea and vegetable curry, you'll have it with rice. I'm a big fan of couscous, big fan of pasta, sweet potato. I'm an absolute sucker for avocados. I eat them.
Avocados are expensive.
They are, but they taste so good sometimes.
That's the one thing that always balances me. I think we get like 6 a week, and I always feel that pang when I pick them up. I'm like, really? That much?
Yeah.
Bastards.
Especially then if you like don't eat it at the perfect time, and then you open it and you're like, it's crap. I don't need it, and I don't even want to eat it now.
I'm not throwing it away. I'm just going to eat it begrudgingly with a sourpuss on my face.
Exactly. There's even brown bits, and you're like, oh, I've got to cut that little bit off now, and then that's like another bit waste. That's like 30p worth of avocado.
I wanted to jump us forward because you recently got engaged. Congratulations.
Thanks.
It wasn't recent, actually. You and Helen, it was 2019, wasn't it?
2019, we got married recently.
Oh, sorry, you got married recently. Yes,
Yeah.
I was going to say you got engaged in 2019 and got married.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you did. You want to do it where you didn't have to do it in the pandemic? Because most people stay engaged for years and years and years. How come you guys decided to sort of take action on it?
So we'd always planned to get married in 2022 because the Rugby World Cup based in New Zealand was supposed to be in 2021. Now, we went through a very long process trying to qualify, obviously like rescheduled games throughout the pandemic and stuff like that. But eventually we qualified, but the World Cup got pushed to 2022. So this year has been a whirlwind. So you've finished the qualification process. We've then played Six Nations. I've got married, and then in September, I'm off to New Zealand to play in the World Cup.
Wow.
Yeah, busy.
That's crazy. What's Helen's background, if you're happy to share a few bits about it? How did you meet each other?
So Helen and I matched on Bumble, and we spoke for a bit, but then it turns out that we had mutual friends. So my best friend, actually, who also recently got married last week, but she was with one of Helen's work colleagues, who's also Helen's friend, and then that girl that she's with, I used to play rugby against, so like I knew them both. And then when they got wind that we'd been chatting, they then planned a double date, and then a couple of days later, we were both on a double date together.
Love it.
So like kind of the app, but then it kind of got pushed rapidly forward because of the mutual friends.
I kind of think that's the way it would always be these days anyway, because when we were kids, or when I was kids, probably for like 5 or 6 years apart, but it was kind of weird to meet people over the internet. But now that's kind of the only way we meet, isn't it? I could not imagine trying to meet somebody in a club or something like that now. It's just not my environment personally. There's nothing wrong with it. It's good to go and have fun, but I couldn't imagine myself having a meaningful conversation with somebody. And maybe that's part of my problem.
People don't talk to each other anymore. That's the problem.
That's why I think so many relationships start at work as well. I met my partner in a previous job, and I just, I was just working so much, so I don't think I'd have ever made time for that social aspect to it. I always feel like gyms are the new pubs as well. It's like people don't really go into pubs and clubs for that sort of environment now. I think there's so many ways in a gym that you can actually meet somebody as well, because it gives you the ability to obviously see each other and learn more about each other. There's so many touch points, not physically, but what I mean touch points, like you get to have lots of different exchanges, whether you're talking to them in the changing rooms as you do in your sessions. And it's I think that's a bit more of a healthy environment to be doing it. There's less all the drugs and alcohol that there's less regrettable decisions are going to happen in the gym that will probably happen in the club.
I mean, I've made quite a few friends in the gym, which is great, because you've already got a shared passion. And like, as much as people don't really talk to each other these days, I try and make an effort to talk to people when I am in the gym. Obviously, like, not mid-set, there's nothing worse than that. But if someone's doing a pretty savage workout, once they finish, you can be like, oh, what have you just done? I might try it sometime. And then, you start a conversation, and then all of a sudden you're mates. Do you know what I mean? And then you're doing sessions together. And like, that's one big thing that I absolutely love about the gyms that I've been to.
That's one thing I really enjoyed about the CrossFit. Have you ever tried CrossFit? Yeah, I do that sometimes. I don't do it all the time because some of the stuff's a bit silly. Some of the gymnastic stuff, my body is just not going to allow me to do. But I do like the community aspect to it. And you get a lot of that on stations where you're able to train together as well. There's something about the sort of healthy, partially competitive aspect to it that really bonds people. I think it's the closest thing to team sports that I've found that's much more flexible around your own sort of lifestyle.
Yeah, I like one of my friends, she opened a gym, it's called Built in Sunbury, and she runs some classes, and I actually met her at another gym, So I absolutely love going to hers. And it's not CrossFit that she does, but she does like absolutely filthy WODs that just make you sweat and question your life decisions. But by the end of it, you're having a great time and you're happy that you've done it. I love stuff like that. I just think it's great. And I think it's great character building as well.
CrossFit kind of took over the space, but ultimately we're just talking functional fitness. Do you know what I mean?
Functional fitness.
They kind of said that they own it now, but they don't really. You know, I ran a park fitness company for about 4 years, about 15 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Long before the evolution. I'm certainly not saying I started it either, but this stuff's been around forever. You know, it is lifting and moving, and there's so much crossover and correlation to our job now. Is there any training you've had to specifically do for being in the fire service, and what made you first want to get into the fire brigade?
So when I was younger in school, when I was in 6th year, which I think in England they call it 6th form.
Yeah.
So I every Friday would go to college and I'd do a uniformed and emergency services course for the year. It was like a vocational pathway, which was really good fun. So I've always known that I wanted to join a service. My dad was in the army and I was doing the army cadets and stuff, so like that was always a debate on would I, wouldn't I. But then the fire service has always been something that's interested me. One of my uncles was in the fire service, and then my auntie at the moment is actually retained back home, so we have really good chats about it. Yeah, it's real cool. We like share some stories of incidents and stuff, and it's just nice to kind of get each other. Like we can use, you know, the lingo, as they say, to be, and we get what each other means, so that's always quite nice. So I always knew that I wanted to join a service, and then I've got a couple of friends in the brigade as well, so I was like, well, I'm going to apply and then we'll just see what happens. And I do think, like, out of all the services, it really would be the career that I think I'm best suited to. So when I applied, then one thing just took after another, and then all of a sudden I'm going through the process, first time applying, and then I get offered a slot at station after training school. Like, got invited to training school, did my training school, and then at station already, which was absolutely fantastic. Yeah, but it all happened really fast. But
how long have you been in now?
Just over a year. So I started training school on the 15th of March 2021, and then I've been at station since the 6th of June 2021.
What did Helen think about you joining something like this and potentially risking your life and time away from home and staying overnight shifts, places, and all the craziness that comes with the life of a firefighter?
I mean, Helen's used to me being away because of rugby as well. And even currently, like, if I'm not on my 4-on, I'm normally at rugby. So we very much do kind of bypass each other a lot of the time. So I think she's always been kind of used to me going away for like camps, training, flying here and there. So then chuck night shift in it, that's away more nights a week, which she understands. Obviously, probably wishes, well, I'd like to think she wishes I was at home, but
I'm sure she does.
Yeah. So I think fine, but when I first, sprung the idea on her, it was kind of a, why do you want to do everything in life that can kill you?
Really?
Speaking about rugby in the fire service, I was like, you just got to keep it interesting,
Yeah.
But no, obviously she massively supports rugby. She's an ex-athlete herself, so she understands the kind of what it takes to be at that top level. And then with the fire brigade, I think she seen how much I loved it when I started it, and then really came round to the idea of how it literally is the perfect job for me. And then ever since then, she's been super supportive the whole way throughout in training school. Just the original kind of, I want to join the fire service, maybe brought some heart palpitations, but we're past that now. I'm very supportive.
What was the aspects of sort of wanting to live parts of your own life? Because I know it's something we sort of alluded to when we were speaking about pregnancy earlier, but there's a big benefit, I think, to people having their own lives as well. I always say, like, a partnership should enrich your life, but it shouldn't define your life. You should both still have your own stuff going on, so that if you do stuff together, that's wonderful. But if that person, because ultimately that person one day is going to go, either through natural means when you leave this earth or they leave the earth, and you shouldn't feel like that person is the gateway to all of your happiness and all of your joy and all of your stuff. It's important that you do have your own life outside of it, but I see more and more that people struggle more with that. And I read something you know, I forget how long ago it was. I think it might have been a Jim Carrey quote or something like that, where there's that aspect of that one person clinging on to the other, sort of saying, you know, please don't abandon me because I've already left myself behind. There's so many people that are in a job that they don't enjoy, or they've abandoned maybe their own passion, or they've abandoned a goal or a dream that they were once going for. And now to see somebody so close to them going after something can be really difficult. And sometimes it shines a big light on the fact that they maybe aren't going for their thing. How do you guys sort of balance supporting each other in your goals, but also being comfortable not being together every single day?
I think, again, it's just communication. Like, I have a color-coded calendar, which Helen normally can look at as well and see my whereabouts. I can kind of see what her plans are, or we speak about the plans. And, like, it is important to make sure that we are still seeing each other. But, you know, we do understand that we both have lives as well. Like, Helen loves to do long distance running, which I couldn't think of anything worse. So she can go off and do that quite happily, and then I can go off and do my bits. And then obviously we've got different friendship groups as well, that, you know, she'll spend time with some of her friends, I can spend time with some of my friends. And I think we do have that kind of healthy balance between the two. But then, you know, we do still find time for each other. I might, you know, cycle next to her while she's doing a long distance run, because there's no way I'm going to run that distance.
Running sucks. You know, what's an ideal run for you?
Like intervals, probably. Like this morning, after night shift, I did just 30 on, 30 off, couple sets of that.
Yeah.
Ideal. Fine with me, because it's short, sharp, gets your heart rate up, and it makes you sweat. But if you ask me to go for even like a 5K, I'd probably be like, oh.
Yeah.
Why?
A 5K is my cap. Like, so when I lost loads of weight, when I stopped taking all crazy drugs, I was 24 stone at the time. So I've come all the way down now. I'm about 18.5 stone. And one of the things I said to myself is I never want to get to the point where I can't just run. You know, if I need to run, I feel like it's like a basic human test. Like, you should be able to lift your body. Like, if something was happening and you had to get over a wall, could you get over the wall? You know, if something was happening and you had to swim to the other side of the harbour, could you do it? You know, if something was happening, you just had to run to get somewhere. You had to run up a hill to escape something. You had to run a mile. You know what I mean? Can you do it? And I think it's really surprising how many people in society actually can't just do that. Even especially like lifting their own body weight is so difficult for some people. And I'm still a heavy guy, but I'm like, I feel like it's all relative. So I try and make myself now. I do it 5 days a week, where I'll run a minimum of 2 miles, and I'll either do it just around the local park, or I'll do it on one of the trainers or stuff at the gym. And then I try and swim 2 or 3 times a week, because, like I say, as life sort of stretches itself out, I want to maintain that functional aspect to it. But she goes for some bigger runs by the sounds of it.
Yeah, like she'll just go for a 10-mile run for fun.
Oh, that sucks. That's such a counter. It's like an oxymoron. There's no such thing as fun run. You know, it's like jumbo shrimp. Do you know what I mean? They don't match each other up. I feel like those aspects are really challenging for me. I wanted to get back to talking about the characteristics that you picked up from rugby, because you said earlier how it built you and how it gave you an idea. You know, the physicality of it, the sort of idea of going out on cold mornings, learning how to get thrown around the ground. How does that build, or what type of characteristics, do you feel that has built that have sort of made you the person you are today and allowed you to have that sort of resilience?
Yeah, I think, you know, like it comes down to perseverance and kind of tenacity, and also just like integrity in everything that you're doing. Like if you say you're going to do something, you go out and do it. And I briefly spoke to you last time about having a color-coded schedule.
Yeah.
So for example, you know, if I've got it in my diary, I'm going to make sure I do it, and then I hold myself accountable for that. But, you know, you've got to be dedicated. You've got to, you know, have a pretty strong work ethic to make sure that you're getting it done. Because when it is cold outside, when it is, you know, wet and rainy, the last thing you want to do is probably go out and do all that kind of stuff. But you have to think kind of, where's this going to get to me? Like, why am I doing this now? Well, because it's going to benefit me in this way. And I think it's like knowing that there's a purpose to what you're doing is really important. If you're just doing things for the sake of doing things that are making you miserable, I don't really believe that that's going to be sustainable.
No.
But if you can see the long-term bigger picture, I think that's important. So I think just like having that kind of tenacious edge is really important as well.
You're also a gym instructor. Oh, sorry, you're a qualified gym instructor. You're a qualified PT, and obviously you still do a lot of rugby coaching. So if you had to have sort of 3 exercises, your sort of desert island exercises, that you were only allowed to take 3 with you, what would they be?
Oh, do you mean like a specific, like a dumbbell exercise or something like that?
Yeah, something physically.
Yeah.
So either running, squatting, dumbbell, whatever. You can't say rugby as a whole thing, for example.
Okay, so the first one would be a devil's press. Love
Pretty
it.
full body. Love it.
Yep, so burpee into a snatch, because I love burpees and I love snatches, so why not put them together? Fantastic. That's
so you've kind of got 2 in 1 there.
no-brainer.
I like where your head's
Yeah,
going.
thank you. Second one, I'm going to say single arm squat thruster.
That's hard.
It is, but if you want something that gets your heart rate from like 0 to 90, that's going to do it. So as much as they suck, again, it's like full body. You're getting some overhead work, you're getting a squat in, and you're getting a raised heart rate.
That's
Love
so
it.
great for posture as well. Do you know what I mean? Stuff like that. I'd been lifting for years and years and years before I'd done any kind of overhead squatting or anything like that, and you realise how out of balance you are.
Oh, absolutely. Like even trying to get your arms like up above your head straight is very difficult these days. And then third thing, is it bad if I just say bicep curls? Because who doesn't love a bicep curl?
Who doesn't love a bicep curl? Absolutely.
Actually, I'm going to change it though. I'm going to say clean, power clean.
Power clean.
Love a power clean. Can bang some weight on it and it just feels good.
Do you know what? I thought you were going to go pull up when you changed it then.
Oh no.
Because pull-ups suck, and I'm not very good at them, but
yeah.
I feel like they're really essential. I need to actually get better at them.
Yeah, I used to like them pre-op. Now that I'm still coming back post-op, I think I'll grow to like them again. But we'll go for a clean, and then obviously if you want to chuck a fourth in there, we'll go for bicep curls. Obviously.
Love it. Been some really challenging moments, no doubt, in the career that you've been in at the minute. I wanted to ask you, is there anything that really stands out in your mind, in the first year or so of your operational career that's been one of your most challenging moments in the job so far?
So a couple of months back, it was just before we played Japan, because the day after this incident, I then flew up to Scotland to play against Japan. So I was like, you've literally gone from 2 worlds. But it was a post night shift shout, and we got a call to a man that got hit by a lorry. So when we got there, his legs were not in the best way, let's just say. And I just think, like, kind of seeing all hands on deck, seeing the helicopter land, the HEMS team, like the communication that was needed, the first aid that was given, like I was one of the first people to like start the first aid. I think something like that was so fast acting and in everything just happened so quickly was like difficult, but also super exciting and interesting, like as an incident. I'd say that's probably like one of the key ones that I've that stuck in my memory. Yeah, I'm gonna go for that one. That was a good one.
How do you actually be able to balance your career with still playing at such a high level? Is there kind of an understanding for the service or brigade that you work for, and they allow you professional sports leave, or is it literally just you have to take your own leave as and when you need to?
So all my own leave, every bit of it, is on rugby.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, like, the brigade have been brilliant so far. Like, I've got some sports leave in there. And then with the sports leave, so they'll put me down for detached duty. And then I just have to, like, repay some hours back by doing outreach work. So I've done a lot of work with the outreach team to kind of promote the brigade, career fairs, stuff like that. So, like, they'll give me some sports leave, but then I've got to kind of show that I'm then paying it back in a way as well.
Yeah, well, they've got to see a benefit from it themselves, haven't they? Which is a kind of like a harsh thing to say, because obviously the fact that you do what you do and that you're outspoken and that you're a sort of great role model for firefighters in general, but certainly women in the job, is hopefully enough. But I get that for people that aren't remotely interested in sport, they'll be like, well, that's your own personal life. Jade, whatever you want to do is what you want to do. But it's great to see that they do give you an element of support with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is important as well because, rugby's it's very male dominated quite a lot of the time. And then you can say the same for the fire brigade as well. So to actually be able to say that I'm doing both, I do want to inspire people to show that they can do it too. Not necessarily, rugby or the brigade, but that they can do something out of, the social norms as well, which I think is really important. And, you get people waving at you when you're in the fire truck and, sometimes you hear, oh, there's a girl in there. And it's nice. It is nice to hear, you do a school visit and obviously you've got half the class that are little girls.
Yeah.
So again, it's just nice for them to be able to see that there's also firefighters that are girls as well. And I think that is super important because when I was growing up, I didn't really see any females play rugby.
No.
So I used to spend my lunch times on the computer like a little geek. And I would go on the Scottish Rugby website and I'd look at the profiles of the Scotland players and think that they were superheroes because I didn't to me, it was all a different world.
Yeah.
So if I can start to show any little kid now that, it is an opportunity, there are opportunities out there, I think that's really important. And as much as, call me old fashioned, I do kind of struggle with a lot of social media in the respect of, how everyone's constantly on it, but it does have a positive aspect as well. Like you can really get your story out, you can really push that people can do what they want kind of thing. So yeah, there are good things around that as well. And I do think that if you've got a good platform, you should use it.
That's kind of what drew me so much to podcasting because I think technically, and I don't even know where it sits in as an organizational thing, but I think technically podcasting probably does sit in the realm of a form of social media, but I feel like it's the purest possible kind because the sort of popcorn fashion, fast food version that we currently consume in social media is here's a picture of Jade or here's a sentence that she says or a quote that she believes in. And you're like, yes, true, and inspiring, wonderful. But that's a very small part of who this person is. I feel like podcasting is one of the purest forms because that's what sometimes annoys me when I hear and we spoke about it before we came on, interviews on radios or interviews on TV where they're like, okay, Jade, we've got 2 minutes. We're going to ask you a couple of things and then we'll probably condense that down to about 30 seconds. And I'm like, is that really all Jade's life? We're going to try and sum up Jade's life in 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Is that really what? And that whilst a lot of this might seem irrelevant to people or people might not feel like they have time for it, I'm like, if somebody really wants to learn about Jade, then they'll listen to it. And the same as if someone wants to learn about a specific sort of person, then they'll put a bit of time in to really understanding them because, when you see that sound bite or that quick little image, you make up your own idea of what you think this person is. But when people hear about, growing up around your brothers, going and doing all that travel, making all that personal sacrifice, hearing that the injuries that you've gone through, meeting your partner, all of those things add real layers to actually who Jade is. Do you know what I mean? The fact she was really skilled at basketball, she put herself into university and then she made the decision to go and be a full-time contracted player. That's the real story. And that's why I feel like it's not going to reach as many millions of people as perhaps an inspirational photo from the top of a mountain will. But I'm like, it just feels more authentic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I do think it's important. It's nice that you can get the story out. And like you said, I do think a podcast is a fantastic way to do it.
So you said that, you get that motivation from inspiring other people. But what for you personally, if we took other people outside of it, because we always will do more for other people than we'll do for ourselves. But what sort of motivates you, maybe in the job that you do every day or also in your life in general? Because I know you kind of said that you feel those aches and pains or you don't feel youthful sometimes, but you still are very young in the grand scheme of things. What do you think is going to be that secret to staying motivated for the next sort of 20, 30 years?
I think, within the fire brigade, for example, it's helping people. You're first responders, you're an emergency service, and I think helping people when they're in their most need, I think something that's going to drive me in the job for probably my entire career, that it's going to be something I thrive off, is helping people. And then I think from a rugby aspect, I want to kind of see where I can get to, how good I can be, and anytime that I step on the field and represent my country or my club, like I'm proud to do so. And I think it's really important to, have the motivation to remember to have fun. And when you stop having fun, that's when, you might want to start considering retiring. But it's like to remember that it doesn't have to be so stressful all the time. And I think that's what I've learned from, the 10 years that I've been in the squad is I was a very, structured player, a player that wanted to get everything right, to be the best, to have all these routines. But then you start getting so kind of stuck in making that all those things has to be right. And then you never had a break and you never had a minute to be like, okay, let's just enjoy the process. Let's just enjoy what I'm doing. It's not always reaching for the next thing, like you said earlier. You want to enjoy the moment, I think. And I think at the moment, if I can enjoy playing, then that's what's going to keep me motivated.
I love that. It's certainly something I really struggled with in the past, just this fear of missing out or the fear of not getting it all in. And whilst time is a finite resource, it's endless, yet it's the one thing we're all going to run out of. You can be so busy rushing from one thing to the next that you don't see the picture because you're too busy stuck inside the frame, running around from corner to corner, never really stepping back and appreciating the massive journey that you've come on. You've now found somebody you want to spend the rest of your life with, and you're in a career you love. That's why I think gratitude and stuff plays such a huge role, because you have to really, who you are now, you're probably your own hero. Do you know what I mean? You are the person that 10 years ago you probably dreamt of becoming. You're doing an amazing career. You've had an amazing career in rugby. You're still fit and healthy and engaging at sport at the highest of levels. How often do you able to not massage your ego, but how often do you pause and consider that?
Very rarely, to be honest. I think because everything is so busy, even still now, I do struggle to stop and see how far I've come often. Obviously I touched upon that time in France, that was a key moment, but I need to keep reminding myself to probably do that more often to see what I have achieved. But in my head, I've only achieved that because of the people around me, the structure that I've had, kind of the start in life where my mum would drop me off at every sports club to allow me to kind of get to where I am today. And I think stopping and appreciating those moments as well as just what I've done personally, I think is really important too.
I love what you said there about your mum and about the people that have supported you as well, because we forget that that's where opportunities aren't always fair, for want of a better description. And also effort, there's an inequality of effort as well. Some people aren't willing to try hard enough, but then from the smaller group of people that are willing to try hard enough, it's a bit like you come through a series of doors where you're like, okay, you get to the first door and they're like, do you live close enough to local rugby club? And if you don't, then you're not really going to progress any further because you can't access it. And then the next door is, have you got a supportive parent that's going to be able to take you everywhere? And you know what I mean? It's like a series of doors that if you don't have one of those things, you have to stay where you are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so many people. I always used to say it about strongman. I'm like, the strongest person in the world has probably never been in a gym in their life. They are some guy or girl in the middle of a field in Africa picking up tractors just because that's part of their day-to-day job, throwing a cow over their shoulder because they've never maybe had the interest or the opportunity to get into it. But that's where I feel, with the greatest respect, the people at high level at sports, they've got a massive effort, massive resilience and stuff like that, but they've also had those opportunities. They've also had, there's a great book called Bounce by Matthew Syed. Have you ever read it?
Yeah, Black Box Thinking, one of his, is one of my favourites.
Black Box Thinking is it? At the beginning of Black Box Thinking, where they tell the story of the lady who lost her life because of malpractice.
Yes.
I had her husband. So her husband, he came on the podcast and shared his story. Yeah. This is 10 years on now.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Honestly, you should go back because he's now got a new partner. He flies the Airbuses out of, I'll not give the airport away, but out of one of our airports. And he's still a pilot. And he was looking at all the malpractice in the NHS and then the differences in things like that. But Black Box Thinking, an incredible book. I'd encourage people to go and see it. But if they read Bounce as well, the one that precedes that, it's about all of the, I think it's like the top 9 table tennis players in the UK all lived in the same sort of 2-mile radius, because it was just around this place where there was a table tennis club available, open 24/7. You could go whenever you like, and they were just around kids who were interested at the same sort of age. And it's a little bit like when you have a sibling, and I wonder if there's something there as well. Do you think there's anything about having an older and a younger brother that has been able to help you develop to where you are? Because having siblings of a similar age, or someone who's also physical, gives you an opportunity for so much more practice. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you haven't got a local friend, or you haven't got a brother or sister you can play with, your development's significantly reduced, I think, because you've got to wait till you're at school again.
Yeah, I think I learned my competitive edge from competing with my older brother constantly growing up. Everything, even now, is a competition between us. Even a board game, it's a competition that ends up, causing a dispute between us. So I do think having that, especially siblings as well.
Yeah. I see it with our youngest daughter. Yeah, her development has been so much quicker than her older brothers because of her older brothers. She's developed from there, and she spoke far sooner than they did because they're always talking around her and they're engaging with her, and they never had that older sibling to do that with. So it's a little bit unfair, but she benefits from it tremendously. I wanted to ask you about bad advice, because it's never something that people really, but is there any piece of like bad advice, whether that's life advice or career advice, that you hear people say, it's like a throwaway comment, that piece of bad advice that you'd encourage people to ignore?
Oh, I think the biggest one for me, because I've had it said to me several times, is don't eat carbs. I think there's so many fad diets out there, and people are constantly looking for quick fixes because everyone lives a busy lifestyle.
Yeah.
I think it's the fad diets and the carbs are the devil kind of thing that are probably the biggest things I see as bad advice. I'm very much a firm believer of just a healthy, balanced lifestyle. There's a time and a place for carbs. You don't have to eat so many, but you also absolutely do not need to restrict them out, to have none.
Yeah.
But you hear and you still see quite a lot on the internet, can't eat carbs, cutting carbs, all this kind of stuff. And I think just a bit more research of what a general healthy, balanced lifestyle can do for you with some, functional movement, activity, even if that's just walking and getting your steps in every day. I think it needs to be more about health as opposed to, I want to cut carbs so I can get a better body in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, 100%. I wanted to just go personal as we sort of finish, about any personal habits or things you've developed in the last 1 to 3 years that you've found most beneficial. Is there any habit you've put into place or equally taken out that you've found made a big change in your life?
So, I'm very much a morning person. I do like a good morning routine. I do slide out of it now and again, especially depending on kind of what my life, what my kind of week's looking like, if I'm on night shift, day shift, etc. But, I try and not be on my phone super late at night. I'll try and read before bed, even if it's just for 10 minutes. So the last thing I look at isn't my phone or the TV. And I do think that helps me sleep better. And then when I get up in the morning, I try and get going. I don't really like to snooze my alarm, even if I really, really want to, because I always feel like it just makes me a little bit more groggier. I'm slowing my day down. I like to just get up and then get started. So I'd say probably just reading before bed and getting out of bed, fast. Yeah. And then I went through a phase of being counting all my calories and macros, and that's probably a habit I've taken out over the last couple of years, because I found that I was getting too bogged down on the numbers, whereas I still do it now and again, but I've managed to take the habit of doing it out and doing it more reasonably now, personally. So I'd say knowing what works and what doesn't work for me and being able to pull that out is really important.
What are you reading at the minute, or is there any particular book or something you found really useful, or even a documentary or a film or a book that you would direct people to?
I'm actually reading Atomic Habits at the moment, which I'm really enjoying. It's quite an easy read. You can kind of like take a lot from it. You can put your own life in it, and you can like kind of see the correlation between it. So I'd recommend Atomic Habits, which I know is one that's spoken about quite a lot at the moment.
Atomic Habits is been out for like 5 or 6 years, I think. It's a really good book. Maybe it's been out that long. I think it has been out that long. Yeah, I read it a long time ago. It's a great one.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. And then I really liked the book Grit. Don't know if you've ever heard of that one.
Yes, that is the author.
Is it Angela Duckworth?
She did Grit. I think she may actually also have another book. Who was Atomic Habits? James Clear.
Sure.
James Clear as Atomic Habits. Right. Again, that was about the best habits utilized. But there's also one called Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss. Oh yeah, Tribe of Mentors, and he's also got another book. But yeah, Tim Ferriss, Tribe of Mentors, Atomic Habits, which is James Clear, and Grit is, I think it's Angela Duckworth.
Yeah, I think it is, because if Carol Dweck's mindset, I know it must be Angela Duckworth for Grit.
Pretty sure it is. Passion and Perseverance is about something like that. That's great. I think like they look at the study. I think she goes into the study of people from Sandhurst and the success rate of people that have passed out of military training. And they did a questionnaire at the beginning of it, trying to discern what were some of the characteristics of those that make it through and those that didn't. And ultimately, it was about their ability to keep pushing forward. And that comes up in something called the Marshmallow Test, which is another great book.
Oh, I've read that, yeah.
Yeah, where they speak about children's ability to whether or not they are effort-based reward, or whether it is outcome-based reward. Like if you, celebrate a child because they get 10 out of 10 on something, versus if you celebrate a child because of how hard they've worked at something. Like whenever Lily brings something home, I'll always go, wow, that's really, really good. That must have taken you ages. How long did you have to work on that? How much effort did you have to put into it? What did you do? How was the process? Rather than just going, you're amazing. What you've produced is amazing. Because then she gets focused on what she's produced rather than the effort she's put into it. The Marshmallow Test and Grit is great things. We'll try and drop those into the notes, and I'll get those ones up by Tim Ferriss as well. We'll drop them in the notes. I wanted to ask, from your time in rugby and your time in firefighting and stuff like that, you'll have led many teams, and also I imagine you'll have worked with some great leaders as well. What are some of the characteristics that you find best in some of the leaders that you've worked with that really inspire you?
I mean, I think a big thing to be a leader is you want to help take the team with you, not necessarily dictate to the team. So I think being a team player as a leader, but also being able to use your voice when it's needed to take the charge. But it's like having that, I guess, being inclusive within the group is really important, because then it's like a buy-in of everyone's working together for the same reason, rather than there being necessarily a hierarchy of, well, I'm the leader and that's that. I think it's a big thing. And then touching back on what I've said throughout is, I think, communication. I just think communication is such a huge thing that's often, I guess, maybe forgotten about the importance. Like everyone talks, but quite a lot of it can get lost in white noise. So I think clear, concise communication and confidence is exactly what a leader needs to have. I'd say that's probably what I've picked up most throughout Fire Brigade and rugby is kind of those elements of it.
I love that. Final one, which I read, actually came up in several articles and things that I was reading for you. You write ETT on the wrists on the duct tape. Do you still do that? I
actually got it tattooed on my wrist now, so I didn't have to keep wasting tape.
I love that. Is it too late for me to have it as a tattoo as well? Because I've got so many, I don't regret any of them, but I've got do more written on one of my thumbs, and nice. I've got carpe diem and all sorts of Latin. What does ETT mean, and how does it play a role in your life now?
So it means empty the tank. So when I play rugby, when I finish, or if I get taken off, or if I've played the full game and the final whistle's gone, I want to know that I've given absolutely everything I have to be the best thing I could be on that pitch for that game. Whether we win or lose, I want to make sure that I've emptied the tank and given everything I possibly could in that game. And then same in life as well. Everything that I do, I want to do wholeheartedly and well. So I want to empty the tank in everything I do, not just kind of float around and read a bit of this and a bit of that and be all right at that. Like, if I'm going to learn something, I want to be good at that something, so then I can get better at something else after that. So it's just, putting everything you have into it and making sure that you've got nothing left to give with different aspects.
God, I love that. Jade, thank you so much for all of your time this morning. I know we'd hunted this out for a while. It's incredible to catch you at this sort of period in your life. You're coming back from recovering from an injury. You're still playing at the national level. You just got married. You're kicking ass, taking names. And thank you so much for sharing where you are now. And you're so incredibly young. I sincerely hope maybe in 10 years' time, when you're still part of the Fire Brigade and you've won World Cups and you've gone on and maybe you've got children, I have no idea. Maybe we'll touch base again.
Yeah, that'd be good. Really, really grateful to be on. Loved it.
Thank you, Jade. I really appreciate your time. Look after yourself and I'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.
The Firefighters Podcast is a global podcast seeking to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operators. Through a series of wide-ranging conversations celebrating those within our sector, we seek to encourage and support this incredible group of people. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield, and I speak with individuals from all walks of life who I sincerely believe can add value to or develop those who have chosen this life path. Please support your emergency services wherever you are in the world, and thank you for listening.